Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the faker's gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast. I may or may not be known as Wandering Winder, and with me is Adam Horton.
Hi.
What's up, Adam?
I've been worse.
That's better than the alternative.
Yeah. I'm glad that this isn't the worst I've been in my life.
I don't know if you noticed, but even though I made us determine who was going to introduce us this time, I still kind of talked over you, so...
No, all I did was pop in and say hi. That's not awkward. That's just me saying hi.
It wasn't you being awkward. It was me being awkward, talking over you saying hi.
No, I'm gonna disagree with that. I don't think there was any problem with what happened.
You're gonna which agree?
Disagree. I feel like that's the entire point of this episode of the podcast, right? Because Becky and I had that episode where we talked about all the Plunder stuff.
Yeah,
and then
you got
you
so
listened
much
to
right
it.
and so much wrong.
You listened to it and you were like, there is so much in this wrong that we need to make another episode.
I mean,
don't have the time for this, but I'm gonna make time to tell you how wrong you are.
Same. Yes. Oh, you were speaking for me. Yes. Well,
I was.
True. Great. Yes. No, I mean, to be fair, most of it was right, but some of the stuff was just like, I don't know. I just also kind of want to be on the podcast, even though I don't have time for it. So, you know.
I know it. I know the feel, man.
Let's jump into this thing, because
right.
Again, I don't really have the time.
Yeah, I understand. Before we get started in earnest, I just want to let you know that there will be a link in the show notes to the first impressions poll. You can give your ratings from 0 to 10 of all of the most of the card-shaped objects in this set. That poll should be open until Friday or so a couple more days after this gets published. If you haven't already done that, please do that. There will be a blog post and potentially maybe some other content stating the results of that and anything interesting that comes with it. Anyway, what do you want to talk about, Dub-Dubs?
Well, 2 questions.
Yes.
Who is Ernest, and do we have to be in him? Loot is maybe the source of many of the say what that I had when I was listening to the podcast. That's a technical term, by the way.
You really didn't like my sextant joke? I thought that was pretty good.
The sextant joke was, I might not have, so like, I don't have any
you want me
time
to tell
to
it
do
again?
anything, so I may have not heard 100% of what you guys talked about in depth.
Okay.
So yes, please make your sextant joke again.
Well, so I've always had a good gaydar.
Oh yes, I did hear this joke. Right. I didn't understand. I did not like that joke actually. I didn't.
Really?
I really didn't.
Do you want me to explain it?
I understood it. I didn't like it.
Well, I'm a dad, so I don't really have control over this kind of thing. It's just gonna happen.
So loot. They all cost 7-star for. I guess that's fine.
Yeah, got that hashtag upgrade synergy.
That's not the problem I have. I mean, I mainly have like the same issue you have. Like, why does it have to be so variable? Why are there 2 of each of them? If you're going to do this, why not make 30 and have 1 of each of them? Like, and then like a third of them don't have buy, and it's like, but a big part of why I think I would want to go for one of these things is because like I need buy, so I'll do this thing that'll get me a loot, and then a third of the time it's just going to be like, no, you don't get any buys, sucks for you. Like,
I've had it happen to me in a couple of games, and it really sucks. Like,
yeah,
there was one game where like the person I was playing against didn't get it the first time, and it felt like that was it. They couldn't win from there. Now I was ahead, but
yeah,
that was it.
But then, like, you go for it the second time and you miss again, and you're just, like, throwing your controller, even though you don't play Dominion with a controller, but you go get a controller and pick it up so you can throw it. I don't recommend throwing objects which are not meant to be thrown. and really much of anything inside. Although I throw my clothes into the clothes hamper. Just
Those
like
are
you gotta live,
soft objects.
you
You
gotta
can throw
live a little
soft
bit.
things,
Yeah, they're not gonna make any problems if they collide with something, right? And I'm not
It's like
throwing them
those
at such a speed.
vacuums that are in the wall. You just kind of chuck your clothes near it, and it sucks the clothes in, and then takes them next to your.
I don't know. I haven't heard of that. That seems.
It's a very bad idea. Yeah.
It seems wondrous in a
very
not
unsafe
the positive
way.
sense of that word.
Like if you have kids or pets or anything that could go near there and isn't laundry, yeah, bad idea.
Yeah. So
My
anyway,
record
just
is
like
3.
in general about the loots, I'm not like, oh, gain a loot. Like that's not exciting to me. Like, sure, I probably need to be like, yes, they're better than gold, most of them.
Which makes it like pretty good payload. Like gold in the buy, that's pretty good payload.
It's decent, but
Yeah,
like
pretty good.
I don't think that like gain a loot is that much better than gain a gold in general. And like, I don't know, there are a lot of fibers that are also really good. So like, not only does like if we look at I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna look at looting because looting is a 6 cost event that says gain a loot, and like I'm gonna take this over buying a gold 95% of the time, and the other 5% is gonna be because like I have a legionary, or like
market square
encampment. Well, no, I mean I'm gonna buy this instead of buying a gold. Like market square and tunnel don't let me. Like, yeah, all of those cases, more than 5% because you can gain gold by cards that say gain gold.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, looting in particular, like, that's a direct comparison. I could buy a gold, I could buy a looting.
Yeah.
Like, I'll buy the gold if, like, I need a card that says gold because it's going to score me points or because it's going to let me reveal it for something else or whatever. But, like, I'm going to take the looting over a gold. But, like, I don't buy gold. I'm not one of those people that's like, don't buy gold. Because, like,
oh god, that is such terrible advice.
Sometimes you should. It is like, I don't buy gold most games, but as advice, I think is pretty bad.
I really think that a lot of people are excited about this because it has a buy on it and they already liked gold too much. And then I think a lot of people are surprised at how good it is because they hated gold too much. And if you just know what payload and deck control is, if you know what your deck needs, and I mean looting isn't the best example from my point, but like if you have 6 in a buy and you have looting and gold, that's kind of a silly comparison. But then there's like 10,000 other ways, I don't know, like 10 or 15 other ways to get a loot. And so that's the comparison now. Right. And maybe you do that if you need some payload.
So looting is not very exciting to me because WoW is better than gold. I'm not usually buying gold. Now, like having said that, sometimes you buy gold. Don't take the advice, don't buy gold. The better advice would be buy something, or it would be something like oftentimes a 5-cost card is better than gold, right? And I think that's still going to be true for looting. Oftentimes, whatever 5er I was going to get is better than a loot.
Yeah, like if it's the beginning of the game and what you need is deck control and not payload, then buy deck control, right?
But like also,
biggest example.
I also think that like just a lot of times the ancillary payload effects of whatever action-y payload are going to be better than. I mean, it depends, right?
That's a blanket statement that people make a lot, yes. And I think I don't like the blanket statement.
I was about to come back on that because what I was going to say is what you do is you look at the board and you say, hey, is this payload option better than a loot? If so, get it. If not, take the loot. Like, that's the real question to ask, right? You could talk in generalities. I mean, I think it's true, like what you're saying. It's a blanket statement, right? Like it's true to say, oh, oftentimes the 5-cost payload card is better than a loot. Like, technically that's true, and that is what I was saying. But you're right. It's a blanket statement. It doesn't matter. Like, when does that statement ever matter? It doesn't.
Right. I mean, it matters when you have the context of a kingdom, a game, a specific game situation. That's when it matters, and that's the comparison that you
game, you don't need the question that says oftentimes or generally. You actually look at what the options are in front of you concretely.
Right. It's
exactly.
And so this is Payload.
Right. This is Payload. Now, if you want to give it a number, I do think that oftentimes
55.
whatever. But that doesn't matter. Like, this is the other thing. Like, the numbers don't matter in a particular game. So,
Sure, the 0 through 10 rating.
Yeah, that's what I mean by the numbers.
Yeah, that's...
Like, the number that it says that it costs 6, that does matter in a game.
I mean, when I give my own personal numbers, like when I have a 10 out of 10, that means something in my brain for when I look at a kingdom strategically. It's like, if you're not gonna go for this thing, you better have an extremely good reason, or maybe no such reason exists. And then a 9 out of 10 has a different severity. And, that helps me strategically on some level.
Sure.
But that's just Adam Horton.
But, like, when you're trying to decide right now, do I get the King's Court that's a 10 out of 10, or the lab that's only a 7 out of 10, whatever you gave lab?
Yeah,
right?
you don't go by the number. It's an 8. But yeah, you don't go by the numbers.
Yeah,
you
like,
figure out the best card for your deck.
You take the lab because you don't have any actions to King's Court yet. So the lab is better, right? Like,
that is, yes.
Dominion is a situational. Anyway, so looting is fine, whatever. Like, you're going to get it sometimes because it's Payload, and sometimes you need buy. And it's usually better than gold. Like, yes, there's edge cases where gold is better, but it's usually better than gold. Like, let's move on. We've got these, yeah.
So before we get into, like, Kingdom cards proper, there is one thing that I want to say, and I wanted to say it on the podcast with you.
Hot.
Plunder is a huge set. Okay.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff in this set, but there's something that isn't in this set. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Alt VP?
Yes, there's no victory cards. There's like the invasion that we're about to talk about is the closest thing we have, but it just says gain a duchy. So, like, that's it. There isn't even a loot that's worth VP, which, I mean, whatever. We talked about that. There's no VP card, and I need to circle back on something here. Remember Hinterland's 2nd edition? They cut Silk Road, and I was like, I'm gonna nerd rage about this, but maybe there is an improved version of Silk Road coming in the next expansion. It ain't here, and I'm mad.
Well,
I'm real mad about it. What did Silk Road do?
Apart from that, well, isn't it some kind of, like, illicit site that wasn't there? Was that illicit? Is that not? I don't know.
I don't know. And
There's
I know
some
about a lot
website
of
that's
these
called
things.
Silk Road that I've heard about and don't have a very good memory of.
Dominion still has a card called Harem.
How did they not cut that when they were getting things out of Intrigue?
I'm not at liberty to say.
I mean, I'm not. That was not a serious
question.
That was a rhetorical question. Yeah, so I guess we could talk about, we added a 100 million, and by 100 million I mean 55, and by 55 I mean, what, 50 Kingdom cards?
Like 40 or something.
It's like a lot. It's a lot. So, like, that's going to adjust. You talk about, oh, well, printing new cards adjusts the ratings of old cards, and, like, it doesn't very much because each card only shows up 2% of the time or whatever, and blah, 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 blah. But, like, we've just diluted the pool of alt VP quite a bit. So the alt VP that is there is probably more important now. And then the stuff that likes having alt VP is probably worse.
Maybe.
So, cool. We have these 2 10-cost events. And I remember when I read these, and I know I didn't give any, like, space or time to transition between the previous rant and what we're going into now. But
sorry, I interrupted you with a rant, and, like, this episode is the rant episode. Like, this is just all about yelling at each other.
It's an invasion.
Wear your seatbelt.
Of rants. So we've got these 2 10-cost events of Invasion and Prosper. And it's like, I remember reading them and I'm like, why does that cost 10?
Yeah.
And I don't understand why they cost 10. Like,
I mean, I said Invasion, I think it costs too much. I said that last episode. no disagreement on that one.
Right. Well, we're not everything I want to talk about is necessarily a disagreement. Some of the stuff is just like, hey, this is like, I wanted to rant about these. Like, so like the 10 cost events that we had previously, right? We had Alliance and we had Populate. In each of them were these big, like, really loud effects, right?
I know, and I want to take some credit for that, by the way.
They made sense as like coherent concepts, right? So like I have more of a problem with Invasion than Prosper. Prosper kind of makes sense as a coherent prospect because it's like,
yes,
you get one of any of the treasures available that you want, and sorry if Spoils is around because you can't get one of those, but
rip.
Sure, that's fine. Like, I don't think it should cost 10 because it's too much, but
I think Prosper would be fine cheaper. I don't
Prosper
think
could cost 8.
That would probably be fine. I think it's probably okay at 10. Like, the difference between 8 and 10, I don't think is a huge amount. It definitely hurts it. But yeah. I think the cases where you want Prosper, you still probably want it, even though it costs 10.
I mean, I don't know, maybe. It's part of the thing is I'm going to go back to Invasion first, and then I'm going to get back to your point about Prosper.
I'm in.
Probably still want it if you got. What is this card? What does this event do? Like, you may play an attack from your hand. What attack do I have in my hand that I couldn't already have played in my... Oh, I didn't have enough terminal space, so I'm going to use Invasion as a village. What?
I mean, I said very similar to that when I talk. I mean, I read all of the things, and then the next words out of my mouth were replaced by a noisemaker. And
I know that the actual answer to the question, you pedants in the comment section who've already made this point, the answer is vampire, because you couldn't have played vampire yet, and now you can buy Invasion, play the vampire, buy another event that like draws you cards right now, and then play the bat in the same turn. Whoa! Edge cased with Wandering Wind, but like, come on, man!
Doesn't vampire? I didn't think the vampire exchange itself on play, right?
I thought it did.
It does on play. All right, you're right.
Exchange this for. Whoa!
All right,
great.
You win. Edge cased. I just got edge cased so hard. It feels
yeah,
so good.
Or I guess Raider, and you really need to play Raider in the buy phase instead of the night phase because
Horn of Plenty. Wait, no, that doesn't get you there.
Yeah, Horn of Plenty, because you're then also going to
somehow play your Horn of Plenty.
Cavalry and get back into
but then you didn't need to play the Raider.
Well, you could have played because you couldn't have played the Raider without buying. Anyway,
okay,
we
got
like
there,
a couple really convoluted edge cases where like that map, but it's mostly like you didn't have enough terminal space, and like when are you hitting 10 and you ran out of terminal space, and like playing this attack card is really going to make that, like, when is that? Like, I mean, it's value because it's a May. Like, it's not worse than not having that line, except aesthetically and like design wise, it's so much. I guess it makes
it mechanical design wise, but yeah,
but like,
it's so
gain a
clearly
duchy.
There.
Gain an action onto your deck, gain a loot, play it. I guess that makes it cheaper, but kind of maybe. What if it's one of those loots that you don't want to necessarily play? You play the loot that something, I don't know. There's a couple of loots you might not want to play. Like, it's not likely, but it's possible, right?
Yeah, like Figurehead.
Which one is it?
It's the one that gives you 2 cards at the start of your next turn, and let's say you wanted the money for next turn. Well, now you ain't getting it, right?
Sure.
Look, we were in edge case land to begin with, man. That's all I got.
I was thinking like there's the one that's an attack, and like maybe they've got some durations or some reactions lined up. You don't want to play that, or make some discard attack, and you had a Haunted Woods, and now you've just nerfed your own Haunted Woods. And like you can come, or probably the biggest case is like it's a game with wall, and you are some reason buying Invasion, which seems perhaps not the greatest idea in a game with wall. And like you get a hammer, and now you have to gain a card costing up to 4. And Ripperoo. Anyway. It just seems like such random things to put together and like bad. Like gain a loot, play it. Yeah, that's like any of those things can be good, but together it just feels like pretty bad to me. I guess you can do it on a mission turn. Cool.
There you go. And that even has thematic synergy, doesn't it?
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm going on a mission. That mission is to invade my opponent.
Maybe my mission is to stop an invasion. Anyway, Prosper, I apparently failed at that mission because here it is printed. Anyway, Prosper, the thing is, right, you said something about that I was going to respond to, but it's taken too long now, and rip.
It's a big effect, but it probably it's not that much worse at 10 than it would be at 8. I think I said that.
You did say that. I don't think that's what I was going to... Anyway, so you gain a loot and any number of differently named treasures. So like base case, you get a loot, a gold, and a silver. How good is that? Oh, you said it wasn't going to be... Yeah, because what I was going to say is, yeah. I think if it costs like 8, you would get it as your first 8 a bit if you're playing money. Like a gold and a silver and a loot might be better than your first profit. I mean, if you hit 8 early enough, right? Like,
okay, sure.
That's a lot of improvement to your deck.
Sure.
And so you might do that, and then you're like much more likely to hit 8 early than hit 10 early in a money deck.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Cool.
Rip
This is
Coppersmith
gaining
synergy.
This gains a lot of stop cards, probably.
Yeah. Kind of like I kind of likened it to Windfall.
Yeah, I think it's worse than Windfall.
I think it's different than Windfall.
I mean, I agree that it's different. Like, would I rather have a gold, a silver, and a loot, or 3 golds?
Well, that depends on a lot. Depends on how much you want that 2/3 chance at a buy.
Yeah.
And it also depends on can you draw your deck versus can you make 10. Which one of those is easier? So, like,
well,
I think that's why I said they're different.
The cost and the condition is definitely, like, significantly different. I'm not even sure that the effect of this one is better. I guess maybe it's easier to get 10 than to draw your deck and have 5.
I mean, it seems
I don't know if that's
very good
true.
in colony games. Like, you're probably getting this a lot in colony games.
I don't agree. I think this is usually worse than platinum. Oh, I guess you can also get a platinum. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so like
loot
and platinum is probably better than platinum, right? And loot and gold and platinum is a good chance that it's better, and maybe you take the silver and maybe... But I guess the thing is, like, you really have to have a lot of deck control because you're adding just like a bunch of bad deck control payload. Which, like,
sure, but like if you're gonna get this, you're not gonna get it when you need deck control and you don't want to add a whole bunch of payload for your deck. You're gonna set yourself up so that this is good. So
I agree, but that is the only reason why I say the thing about like the costing 8 thing, because like I think if it were cheaper, then you would get it in some deck, like a different kind of deck. You would be able to get it in.
Sure. If it were cheaper, you would get it more often than if it was 10.
Great. I don't think I'm getting this very often, but we'll see. I've never played with it, so there you go.
I gave this a 7.
And I think I gave it like a 3.
You gave it like a 4. Well, you gave it a 3.
I gave it a 4. I gave it a 4.
You gave it a 3, and then you also gave it a 3.
I should give it a 4. Whatever.
Okay.
I hate it. Let's move on.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
Where did I put my... Yeah, so the next thing is... So we've got these 2 5-cost attacks, right? And so we've got Cutthroat, which is like a militia thing, but instead of giving you 2 money, it's a duration that says the next time anyone gains a treasure costing 5 or more, gain a loot. And then you've got Trickster, which gives everybody else a curse, and then you get to, like, save a treasure, right? Basically, you get a free save that has to go on a treasure.
Yeah.
Great. Not save because it's from play.
Well,
Not
yeah,
from your
you
hand.
still get to play the
It's
treasure.
better
but,
than save.
Yeah, it's
Great. So we kind of feel like opposite on these. Like I think we evaluate these kind of flipped from each other, right? You're like, Cutthroat's the good one. Trickster reminds you of Sea Hag. It's fine, but not great.
I actually had them rated very similar. You think
Oh.
that Cutthroat is awful, and you think that Trickster amazing, and I'm kind of in the middle on both of them.
Yeah.
Last episode, I started the episode with my rating being 7 on Cutthroat, and then during the episode, I changed it to 6. And like every time I see this card and think about it, I'm like, why did I rate it that high? So
So you're coming down.
I'm definitely coming down, and like every time I see it in a game, I'm like, oh, this is a militia. I need to get this,
Right.
and it's not. And like I'm definitely open to the idea that a 6 rating is too high. And like you gave it a 2, and that
it's like I was feeling vindictive. It's got to be like a 3, maybe.
It's hard for me to get all the way down to 2. I
think this card is bad, man. I think it is like a 3, but
I can understand a 3.
The way I read this card is it says each other player discards down to 3 cards in hand. You get nothing. Haha. This doesn't go back in your deck.
Right. Yeah.
Because
that's a problem.
Like other people gaining treasures that cost 5 or more doesn't happen often. And obviously, if there's like Counterfeit in the Kingdom or Crown, I guess is a better example because you'd probably be getting more of those later. This gets better because like it's going to trigger and come back in your deck more often without you going out of your way. But like I look at this and I'm like, in most games, the only treasure that costs 5 or more is gold. How often do I want to get a gold so I can get a loot and this back in my deck? It's the same stop card problem again, but like every turn I need to do that if I want to keep attacking my opponent. So it's just like more and more and more and more stop cards, right? Like
right. It seems like the point of this card is not to consistently attack your opponent with it, right?
Right.
This seems very bad at doing that.
Prosper is a card I could get once, or an event I could get once or twice or something, and then like I don't need to keep getting it. I don't need to keep adding draw to continually support it. This card, if I want to keep drawing my deck, I need to keep adding tons and tons of draw and gaining expensive treasures in order to keep supporting. And that's just like not realistic almost ever, I don't think.
Yeah, like it seems like there's always an awkwardness to it. Like if you want to just play it and get like a loot or two, play it once or twice, get a loot or two. Maybe that's a thing you can do. But then if you don't want to be gaining tons more payload cards, then you still have this Cutthroat hanging around that you can't really play. Like maybe you can play it one more time if you think that the game is going to be over or whatever. But like that's awkward. Or you're going to keep doing this and then keep maybe gaining payload if your opponent decides that that's a thing that's going to happen to you. It's still kind of awkward. Like none of it seems catastrophically bad, but you never leave awkward territory, and I think you only go downhill from there.
And I guess probably the best use case for it is like kind of what you're talking about, where you don't look at it as much as a militia as you look at it as it's a loot gainer, right?
Yeah,
but
I mean,
you need to be gaining.
Talked about how bad it was at being a militia, so yeah.
But you need to be gaining other expensive treasures in order for it to be a loot gainer, so I'm still kind of like skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is loot makes this work. So like if your opponent gains a loot with their Cutthroat, if you get yours down first, and then your opponent gets the loot.
No, that doesn't ever work. Well, I mean, not
well,
really.
I mean, it's not something you really plan on or count on, right?
No, what I'm saying is if your opponent gains a loot with their Cutthroat, they had to have triggered their Cutthroat, and the thing that triggered their Cutthroat will also trigger yours anyway, so their loot won't. The loot they're gaining from the Cutthroat won't ever trigger your Cutthroat.
Right. The thing I was poking at was the idea that you necessarily always have to get 2 payload stop cards into your deck to get your loot.
Okay, yes, true. If your
that
opponent,
was what I was poking at.
Yeah, okay, yeah. If your opponent is getting those treasures, then yes. But like are they going to help you out with that? Because like they could see this coming too, right?
Firmly in awkward territory.
Yeah.
Like it's just the person that plays their Cutthroat first may have the option to wait if they want.
Or the option,
maybe they won't. I don't know, man.
The option I want to take is not getting the Cutthroat in the first place and like leave you high and dry. I'm not going to help you.
This seems like the hardest way to get loots in the game, except for maybe Surge.
I mean, I don't know.
I think the hoops you have to jump through, this is the toughest one. I think this is harder than Invasion. Unless hitting 10's impossible, in which case why do you want that loot so bad?
This is strictly easier than Invasion, right? All you have to do is play this and then like buy a gold. I mean, I think it's worse than Invasion maybe, but I don't know that it's harder to necessarily trigger. I don't know.
The hoop you're jumping through is funny shaped and it smells bad and
I'll put it this way. It might be I don't know that it's a harder hoop, but it might be a worse hoop, a more painful hoop.
That may have been what I was trying to say, but failed.
Cool. Yeah. Like you can get through it, but you won't be happy about it.
Okay.
And then Trickster. So Trickster, like.
Let's talk about Trickster.
Yeah.
Get your popcorn, kids.
So Trickster is like, if I'm not drawing my deck, I'm gonna save my best treasure across, and next turn it's gonna make me some money. And like, how much money is it gonna make me? Probably on average, I'm gonna save a silver across. That's gonna vary a lot, but I'm gonna say on average, I'm gonna save a silver across.
But I think the silver is a great comparison. It's a great like normal case.
And like, so this is in that case where I'm not drawing my deck, it's giving everybody else a curse, and it's
$2 next turn.
Giving me 2 money next turn, which is like, if you squint, kind of, sort of, it's like a pretty bad mountebank. But like, mountebank is insanely good, so a bad mountebank is still pretty good, I think.
There's a lot of room to be worse than mountebank and still be a good card.
And especially in that kind of a deck, right? In that kind of a deck,
money density deck,
2 money and I'm junking my opponent, like that seems really good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seems the other comparison you could make is this, like, oh, it's giving my opponent a curse and then I'm drawing a card next turn, right? Because I don't have to draw like if I'm drawing my deck, right? I'm drawing a card next turn with this because
I do not accept that comparison.
I mean, it's worse. It's worse than strictly saying.
I don't think saying it's like drawing a card. I think it's misleading to say it's like drawing a card. I don't think it's like that at all. I think it's just money next turn.
Here's the way that it's like drawing a card. If I'm trying to draw my deck, I have to draw fewer cards than if this were only giving me money.
If you're drawing your deck, drawing your deck every turn, then realistically, in a game of Dominion, you're just going to have another treasure card.
What?
You're just going to have another treasure card that you're not drawing.
I have 5 treasure cards in my deck. I only have to draw 5 treasure cards. If one of them is in my next hand, then I only have to draw 4 treasure cards. Right?
Look, in some cases when you're drawing your deck and you have an exact plan for the exact number of treasures that are in your deck, and at some point in the game that will not change ever.
I'm just saying,
then you might be able to say they are equivalent in that game.
In terms of the number of cards I need to draw next turn if I want to draw my whole deck, because this starts in my hand instead of in my deck, it's 1 fewer.
And what I'm trying to say is that in those games, in so many of those games that don't fit the exact condition that I had said before, that you're just going to build your deck differently to where it would just be the same in terms of deck control, because that's what a sane person does. Is
you're saying you would add more deck control. I'm saying this makes you not need to have quite as much deck control as if it was just give your opponent a curse.
Okay, I think we're converging to the same thing here. I just didn't like the way that you had said it.
Drawing a card is not...
Anyway, let's move on.
If this was at the end of your turn, draw a card, it would be better than it is for that scenario.
Yeah.
Maybe not in money density, depending, right?
Right, but, and also I think that's... Well, please continue. Go ahead. Sorry.
So that, when I kind of sort of squint at it and do a really, really bad, like, I can't see very well squint at it, like, it's kind of like half a witch, but like a bad half a witch. But witch is really good. So like I definitely think this is significantly worse than Mountebank, significantly worse than witch. And yet those cards are so strong that I still think this is going to be pretty strong. I think I'm going to not want 2 copies of this very much, though. Like, the second copy feels so much worse because the benefit is noticeably weaker than like the other curse givers that I want to actually have in my deck. To where it's like, it is a liability if it's not giving out the curse, right? If the curses are empty, I'm like never buying this card.
It seems unlikely to me.
I mean, somebody can edge case me. I'm sure there's some scenario. Oh, it's worth 2 points because there's museum. But like, it's come on.
Yeah. So, your justification for saying this is going to be pretty good is that it's worse than 2 good cards.
It's worse than 2 cards that are really, really good, and I don't think it's that much worse. I mean, we'll have to see how much worse, because again, I haven't played with any of these cards at all. But
so, I mean, I firmly disagree. Like, I really don't think the word good should be used to describe this. I think the Sea-Hag comparison is much more accurate. I mean, look, I'll agree with you that it's worse than Mountebank. And we didn't even talk about the fact that Mountebank hands out 2 junks.
Sometimes Mountebank hands out 0 junks.
Great. It hands out way more junks than one
On
time
average,
every time you
sure.
play it. Okay. We didn't even talk about that, and we didn't talk about the fact that like Witch is actually deck control positive in your deck when you play it. You have to draw this on your turn. Okay, you didn't have to draw the silver. You still got to draw this stupid
This
thing.
is at best deck control neutral, and you like have to jump through a couple hoops to get that to be the case.
It's
right?
deck control neutral provided you have a treasure, which is whatever. It means
it's
you have to draw
best
your
deck
deck
control
every turn.
Neutral, but also a terminal, which is deck control.
And not the first turn you played it,
Right.
So it has a lot of those issues, and that makes it way worse than Witch. So I think I agree it's worse than those 2 cards. I think it is significantly worse than those 2 cards. Okay. Those 2 cards, Mountebank helps you hit 5 more to get a second Mountebank or whatever else you're going to have to do. Witch draws you cards. So with a village, it's super, super great. And without a village, it's still pretty decent.
There are quite a number of times where I have bought a Witch when the curses were empty because, like,
you need some
the
cards,
draw
bro.
on the board's really bad. And, hey, Witch draws me 2 cards.
Sure. I really think that the comparison to Sea-Hag is appropriate. I really think it's like, I mean, this attack is less bad than Sea-Hag, and I mean, I've played so many games where people are open in Sea-Hag, and I just go for trashing, and I'm so far ahead. And so this costs 5. I'm going to be super more ahead because of the tempo. While this doesn't do nothing for you like Sea-Hag does, the attack hurts less, it comes online later, and the effect of this thing doesn't seem that much better. Like, it's merchant ship in big money decks, and when you're drawing your whole deck, that's when Sea-Hag was at its worst. Okay, but I'm just saying, I've played merchant ship in big money. I know what it's like to have $2 at the start of your next turn.
It feels
not
so
impressed.
Good.
I am not impressed. Pass.
It feels
move
so
on.
Good.
Get out of my face. Like, I don't. It's not worth 5. It's barely worth a terminal action on 3. Like, maybe that's where our disagreement is. How good merchant ship is in big money. Because I think it's trash garbage. And sure, there's a lot of room to be better than merchant ship and still be a good card.
Yeah, sure.
But I gave merchant ship a 3, and I gave this a 5.
No. Okay, great. Yeah, I don't know. You might be right, and like you make a pretty good argument there. I think it's going to be better than Sea-Hag, and I don't think Sea-Hag was horrible. Like, a bunch of the times you would go around Sea-Hag and trash and be like, but like, Sea-Hag wasn't the worst. Like, you couldn't just ignore it all the time, and even sometimes when there was trashing, it's kind of annoying to have to trash the stuff. And
right. I mean, Sea-Hag, when it was worth going for, it had a huge negative effect on the game. And I'm glad that this costs 5, so it can't be like that when it's good. But that's because it's weaker at attacking than Sea Hag.
Cool. Let's move on to Cage, because
Let's.
time. Great. Cage. So I don't think we're that far apart on this. The big thing is like it's a huge burst early because it's like it's trashing up to 4 cards.
Mhm.
And then it's going to be an issue later. Because like they come back and then that's bad. I do want to note that like what you can do, and not that this is like a perfect solution, but what you can do is like when you buy the province, buy another cage, and then you recage the stuff the next turn. But that
if you can draw everything,
But that makes every province like a lot more expensive, because you not only need 8 and a buy, you need 10 and 2 buys, and
or maybe 12 and 3 buys.
Yeah, if you also want to take care of the provinces, sure.
Or if you needed 2 cages to get thin to begin with.
Yes, like if you're using more than one. So like yeah. I think yes. And apart from that, like the other way that you can try to abuse this is just like don't have a turn after you gain a green card.
2 turns after.
Sure. Don't have 2 turns after, but mostly that's probably going to be by not having 1 turn after, I suspect, because like
seems reasonable.
You're mega turning or never.
Hey, but if you're like tripling.
Yeah. If you're triple into triple, then your deck sucks. That's probably fine. Sure. Yes, that's a good point. But I just think like just the initial speed boost is going to be reasonable, a decent, like not always by any means, but like if the other trashing is expensive, like if the other trashing is at 5, then like you open with one of these, you get some trash, not actual trash, but some thinning out of it, and then like by the time they come back, you have stuff for you have other trashers to deal with.
You have deck control. It's similar to when the way you build when you're going to get junked, right?
Yeah. Like when your opponent was going to play a Sea Hag on you, and it's like, well, this is kind of annoying. I'll just get some extra trashing though.
Something like that. Or that sorceress business that doesn't come online till later, but people end up usually doing it somehow or something.
Those never give out curses. What are you talking about?
Hey, the one with Sybil. Anyway.
Sybil Shepherd?
Potentially. So I gave this a 5. You gave it a 7. I don't think we're
really that far apart. No.
I don't. But I do think you think this is better.
I probably do. But I don't think it's that big a difference. The biggest thing there I wanted to point out was like, if you can replace the cage the turn you're getting the green card, then you can kind of shuffle along and be okay. But it's not ideal.
Right. The what I wanted to say though is I did take a peek at I have like 60 entries on the poll. It's so many responses. And I did take a peek, and the community's opinion, I just kind of looked at the bell curve from far away. It's pretty close to your opinion. So I'm kind of below where I'm kind of, rating.
Well, like I could see it going down to 6. I don't think it's going to be like
I could definitely see it going up Chapel. Yes, but worse than Chapel. I mean,
and like Chapel is great, so
in a Megaturn deck it is the same as Chapel, but it's better than not. You know what I mean?
It's not a terminal action. Blah 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 blah. Like you can open with this and a Smithy, and like sure.
Yeah, that's so
actually
good.
Probably pretty decent, but
Grotto. But in any case, Grotto.
Yes, in any case, Grotto. The only thing I'm pretty much in agreement with you on this. The only thing I wanted to say is if this didn't have the up to 4, so it actually was like Cellar in that it was unlimited, I think this card would be very, very good.
Really?
Yeah, because what you do is like you draw your deck, and then you have your 4 or 5 junk cards in your deck or whatever, because you've got your few junk cards that you couldn't get rid of, and or like you didn't need to spend all your money this turn, so you don't play all your coppers, right? And so like you have your 4, your 5, your whatever, late in the game especially, right? I have 6 green cards and 2 coppers I didn't need to play this turn, so I would put them all on my grotto. And then the next turn, I just have this huge hand to start with. I am supremely reliable. So I think it would actually be like very, very good reliability if it didn't have the up to 4. As it is,
you're telling me the number you give this card would increase if it didn't say up to 4 on it?
If it said any number instead of up to 4, I think I would put this up. I would notch it up a number. Yeah.
I disagree. I would not change the number, and I think it's going to be rare that the situation you talk about happens where you're going to wish you had more cards set aside. There you go.
I mean, I still think when you're gonna get this, and you're gonna get this sometimes, it's gonna be for a similar thing because you're gonna set aside your 3 or 4 green cards and then have more reliability the next turn. In which case, it's like, I don't know, maybe better than Cellar, but you kind of need 2 of them. So
yeah. So I just think it's funny that like I flatly disagree with the statement you just made, but also like it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It whelms me.
I also am whelmed.
Great. Cabin Boy.
Let's talk about Cabin Boy.
So there's one tiny thing. You pointed out Hireling, and then you have eventually later remembered Captain.
Yeah, and
there's also Prince now because of that errata.
So I actually got a comment on the YouTube video about this too. Someone else noticed. When I was editing the episode, I remembered Prince, and I actually did, like, on the video, it's not on the audio, but on the video, I put like a huge Prince card, like sideways, kind of making fun of myself for missing Prince.
Nice. So that's another thing that you can.
And I had to download the duration version of Prince, like the image of it, because I didn't have it, because I haven't talked about Prince on the podcast since it got eroded for the 3rd time.
Ripperoo. So like that's a thing you can do, but the main thing I want to talk about with this card, and again, I don't actually think our ratings are very different.
They aren't.
But the main thing I want to talk about is like, this is kind of like a peddler. Because like a peddler, every turn that you play it is, well, every turn, like if you're drawing your deck, let's say, every turn a peddler is, you know, even on cards, even on actions, because it replaces itself, and it gives you a money. And this is half the turns it's even on cards, every turn it's even on cards and actions. And half the turns it gives you 2 money, and the other half the turns it gives you 0.
Yeah. So
it's kind of like a peddler. Now, I want to say, as soon as I had that idea, my next thought was, yeah, and Caravan is kind of like a lab. No, I think this is closer to peddler than Caravan is to lab. Why? Because if you're drawing your deck every turn, the 2 Caravans draws you 1 card every turn, right? And 1 lab draws you 1 card every turn. An extra card, I should say. Right? It increases your hand size by 1. You need 2 Caravans to equal 1 lab. Whereas this gives you 2 of these, gives you 2 money every, like 2 Caravans gives you a card every turn. 2 of these gives you 2 money every turn, which is the same as 2 peddlers, not 1. So I think this is closer to peddler than Caravan is to lab. Having said that, Caravan is a lot worse than lab. And I still think this card, if we ignore the trash it for the duration part, which is
I think
hugely contextual, like, yes, if Captain is on the board, this card is much, much better. And hey, I guess that's thematic. Because Captain is really good, and this probably gets you to Captains faster. So you probably take a bunch of them and fine, right? Like, you probably agree with me. The typical board with Captain, this card gets a ton better, right?
I probably open with this bad boy, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, so if we ignore that for the case, and it's just you get 2 money at the next turn, and the trash this for a duration is just like some trinket text gravy that every once in a while get to empty this pile or something, whatever, you know. How good is that? And it's definitely worse than Peddler, mostly I think for the early game. Because if you open with a Peddler, you're probably, like if you go Peddler Silver, you're probably hitting 5. If you open this Silver, you're maybe hitting 5.
Yeah.
because this is gonna, you draw this turn 4, which happens 5/12 of the time, is gonna miss the shuffle, and I guess here's the other thing, right? Instead of being 1 money every turn, is no money one turn and 2 money the other turn. And I know that people say that having 1 big turn is better than having 2 small turns, but that's not true usually. I mean, it depends on how big the turn is, right? Oh,
right,
my one
tactician,
big
yes,
turn gained. I don't even think that it's true with tactician, really, but
like it isn't
like,
with Haven.
yeah, and that's not even what you use Haven for usually, right? But
right.
like you just so like, would I rather hit 5 and 5 or would I rather hit 7 and 3? I'd rather hit 5 and 5, right? Especially in the early game. Yes, it depends. It absolutely depends. As with almost all the stuff we're talking about, it is situational and it does depend. And like, I think in the mid game, you're going to get this more often than just when there's a good expensive duration on the board. Because it's like, it's fine payload that, and it is payload that doesn't hurt your deck control. And it's fine as that. It's just not it's not good. It's fine.
I'm not going to, I don't know that I would go so far as to say it's fine for that.
Would you say that Treasury is fine for that?
No.
Okay, great. Because I think this card is better than Treasury. I'll put it that way. It's somewhere between Treasury.
About the same.
It's better than. Oh, I think it's notably better than Treasury. So I guess I do think this card is better than you. But like,
yeah, by about 1, judging by our ratings.
maybe 1.25. I mean, I something that I'm going to want to figure out, but is really hard for me to understand without playing with it more, is like, how much value is the trash this to get a duration if there's just some good 5-cost duration on the board? Like, I'm not going to get this for that purpose, but like, it's extra value that I can choose to do that, right? I will do it more than never.
I feel like Barge, that could definitely happen. Wharf obviously is Wharf, but that's not a fair thing. Wharf is a 10 out of 10.
Right. So like, it needs to be a good duration. Isn't there is a treasure duration in this set that you get to play the turn you gain it?
I don't know if there's any treasure durations that cost 5.
Yeah, the one that gives you 3 money and a buy.
Yeah, but that costs 4. So like, why are you getting this to get that?
No, not that one. The other one that gives you 3 money and a buy.
Oh, buried treasure.
And when you gain it, you get to play it immediately. Right?
Buried treasure.
But it gives you the 3 money and the buy the next turn. Yeah. I don't know any of these names. I haven't played with these cards. Maybe you tactically you do it for.
So yeah, it's like the buried treasure instead of a duchy thing. Like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do I want 2 next turn, or do I want a duchy?
Well, it would
something
be
that's better than a duchy. Yeah.
This turn, right?
Do I want? Oh, well, you
do I want
choose it at the start of your next turn, or 3. Yeah, sure.
Do I want 2 this turn or 3 and a buy next turn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tactical, not a duchy, buried treasure.
Right. Yeah. Great. We'll see. I think the money effect is a little bit better than you, because like, if I'm drawing my deck,
Agreed.
this is a way to add payload that doesn't hurt my deck control, which I
but you don't get it on the first turn when you really need it, and like, in order to make it peddler, which is mediocre at best, you have to get 2 of them, and you have to stagger them. And
actually, that was what I was gonna say. Is it's kind of like a peddler, except you lose a turn, and in some respects,
when you're drawing your deck, that matters the most.
Well,
and that's the only time you can make that comparison.
In some respect, you lose a turn doesn't sound that bad. In another respect, if you had to skip 1 turn at the start of every Dominion game, you would lose so much more often.
Oh yeah.
Let's move on to flagship.
Let's.
Again, I think we both gave this an 8. Mm-hmm. Here's what I wanted to ask you though. What do you think about opening with this card?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds hot as long as the other thing you want is in terminal.
Yeah, okay. I think we're agreed then, because like, eventually this is going to come back And so it seems like a lot better than a silver if I don't have to worry about terminal collision and assuming that I'm going to have other actions that the terminals like. If this is going to be a good card in my deck later, it seems like a much better thing to open than silver.
For sure.
And like I get to open, I still get to hit 5 with it, and then it's going to be a better card later. This seems very good in that situation, and that is a big leg up over Throne Room, and yet still not enough to make this as good as Throne Room. Or
well, sure, the Throne Room's a 9 out of 10, and this isn't
an 8 out of 10.
I think it's funny that like these orange cards, the ones that stay out until a thing happens, it's funny that they don't have most of them don't have the like orange and tan issue in the opening that I have. And I just think it's not because of that necessarily. It's just they all kind of happen to not be that way. Not all orange and tan cards are things that I hate opening with or would never open with. And I've gone into that, and most of the people who think I'm wrong about that don't actually know what I said, but I still get comments about it anyway.
So tools.
Yeah.
Tools. This is I'm notoriously like low on workshops. This is a workshop I can get behind because this is a workshop that is not terminal. You can't draw it dead. You can't do gain and play. It can't gain victory cards. But like it gets you good cards. It's not expensive itself. It gets you good like. But here's the thing. I know Becky talked about on the podcast. She's like, yeah, but like it never. I end up playing in it, and I can't get anything that's very good off of it.
Yeah, you really need to be drawing a lot.
You don't want to get this too early. You don't want to open with this card. Like, this card is so bad in the opening, right?
For sure.
Like, so bad. You want to basically be to the point where if you're not drawing your deck by the time you get this, you want to be, like, pretty close probably. Or you at least want to have a very good chance of having a card that you would really like to get in play when you do this, which is probably one of your own cards. I mean, sometimes your opponent is going to have a duration in play.
That, like, never, ever happens.
Going to react, whatever. Like, if they have a hireling in play, you can be pretty confident it will still be in play by the time you play your tools.
Neato. Sounds like I also want a hireling, by the way.
Which was great to gain us. So tools gaining it would be great, but like hopefully you already have one.
Hard for me to imagine like wanting to get a tools before there's a hireling in my deck in either case.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically I could imagine some scenario where I'm going to get the hireling.
I just said it would be hard. I didn't say I couldn't do it.
Okay, great. But like the ability of here's the thing I want to pitch to you, dear listener, who like me does not like workshops. This card can gain King's Court.
It's pretty
Moving
hot.
on. Crew. Yeah. So there's a general thing where I think you're higher on terminal draw than I am, which is fine.
Am I higher on like everything than you are?
There is also a general thing that I try to make my grades like centered around 5, and so I think my average rating is like half a point lower than you. There are some things that I rate higher than you if you go look at the comparison, whatever. But in general, So I do think that this is good. I think you probably don't want to get like if you're trying to draw. Which is, I suspect, usually when you'd want to get this card, but not always, as we'll get to in a second. If you're trying to draw your whole deck, I think you probably want to get like 2-ish of these, and then mostly other draw.
If there's another Smithy on the board, sure. That sounds reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes if there isn't, you just get more of these because, like, you need to draw
because you need some Smithies, bro.
But like I might even straight up buy Smithy for 5 over like the 4th copy of this.
Sure.
Just because like here's what you want to avoid. The disaster scenario is like, oh, my deck is so reliable because I have a bunch of these. Except then like I draw a hand that doesn't have a village in it, and suddenly that hand is a dud, and then my next hand is all crews, so it's also a dud. And then the rest of my shuffle doesn't have any draw because I drew all my crews. So the entire shuffle is ruined. That's what you want to avoid. So that's why I think you don't want to get like a big stack of 5 of these very often.
Sure.
The other thing I want to note is that there are a few ways a few things that synergize with this that let you play basically like the best version of Smithy Big Money ever.
Oh yeah.
Where you get to play this card, one copy of this card every turn, and then you just have a bunch of treasures. So Hireling that we were just talking about, Hireling is a great way to do this, right? You have to order your triggers correctly so that this goes on your deck, and then you draw from the Hireling. So you draw this, and then you play this, and every turn
you have
you
9
have an
cards.
eight card hand.
Oh, right.
I mean, one of the 9 cards is the crew, if you want to say 9 cards. But yeah, so you have an 8 card, and like at that point, it doesn't take that much to be able to start buying provinces like pretty reliably.
Yeah.
You can sometimes do a similar thing with crop rotation, really, really strong. There's other ways, like City Gate, you get to play this every turn. Silos, you play this probably every turn. So there's like a bunch of ways that you can reliably play one copy of this every turn. And like while terminal draw big money is usually not very good, that's because like it's hard to build that deck to function properly. If Smithy Big Money got to play the Smithy every turn, it would be much better.
Without having to worry about drawing dead
Without having to
Smithies.
worry, yes, without having to worry about drawing stuff dead, which like you do want to not add other, actions to your deck if you're doing that. So it's also not like it's fantastic. It's not like, oh my god, it's a power combo.
Scheme
But like,
gets you there.
it's something to.
That's
What did you say? Get you there?
Scheme gets you there.
Scheme does get you there. You scheme the scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's neat.
That's neat. Scheme is like it's kind of like Citygate for those purposes, right? Like
it's a little better, but yeah. No, it's the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So like not that like, oh, if this combo is on the board, I better play it, but just like be aware of all the Smithy Big Monies that are around.
That's a big deal,
This can enable it more than most any other card, I think.
It seems like a huge boost to money.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. Yeah. Like I would use the word huge.
I would probably go with something more like large or significant, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'd say huge.
Okay, let's talk about Pendant and Cash, cards which can get you huge amounts of money.
Whoa.
And
that was
I guess
such
Cash
a good segue.
Occasionally does other things, but mostly not. Yeah, I think you're much higher on these cards than me. Much higher? Notably higher. You're higher.
Well, Becky definitely is, but I also am.
Yeah, so these cards, we'll get into maybe a little bit how King's Cash doesn't always. Like, King's Cash I like a lot more when you've got supplies, because, like, bring it on, man. Suddenly you've got draw.
God, that's hilarious.
But I'm not kidding, though. You do have draw.
That's why it's hilarious.
Yeah, I know. But like, okay, Pendant just makes you money, right? And it makes you so like if you're playing a money deck, how much money is it going to make you? It's going to make you at least 2. I mean, theoretically it could make you only 1, but like it's usually going to make you at least 2 and oftentimes 3 and occasionally 4, right? Like
yeah, I mean, I think saying that it's going to make you 3 most of the time is pretty safe.
I don't think that. I think that it's going to be probably about equal between 2 and 3.
Okay, in the cases where this was going to make you $2 though, like that's not a province hand anyway. Unless you drew silver pendant. Wait, that's still a province hand. Yeah, like
no, I mean you're going to draw this with only coppers or something, and because you're not going to draw it with any silvers, and then it's going to be not exciting as a 5.
Yeah, okay, so the comparison is still gold. Like, I think I think this makes you 3 in every appreciable way that actually matters in a money density deck.
No, but I don't think that that's true because you're mostly, I mostly agree with you when it comes to buying province. I mean, this
Okay.
will let you down sometimes, but not always. But I think that there are situations where this makes you 2 because you draw like copper, copper, this estate, estate, and you're very, very sad.
I suppose. Can
I
can I
also
have
think,
can one of those estates be a province because we're at that point of the game?
sure, yeah, great. But I also think that like oftentimes, even in money decks, I will buy a 5 cost over a gold. If this is aspiring to make 3, I think I'm usually getting a different 5. Again, this is the same discussion as earlier. Look at
It
what's
is.
available. Look at what the deck. But
And I don't think that I'm going to buy a 5 over gold comparison as being fair to Pendant.
okay, explain.
Because most of the time you want to buy a 5 over gold, you're looking for deck control, not payload.
Okay,
And I would buy
that's
this over
fair.
gold almost all of the time.
I really okay. That's interesting.
Yeah,
In a
until
money
I have
deck,
two until I have 2 Pendant. I'm
I think I would usually buy a gold over this in a money deck.
depends on the money deck, but I mean this just
I mean, so
costs less. So a lot of the times you buy your golds on 6 and
the,
you buy your
the
Pendants on 5.
sure,
I don't.
sure, sure. The first gold is can't be worse than. I mean, again, unless there's other treasures. Obviously, if
Right.
there's other treasures, like if there's, I'm also playing with supplies, and I'm also playing with ducat, and I'm also playing with
Yeah, sure,
lucky
but like
coin.
in a money density deck, the fact that
Yeah.
this makes you 3 a lot of the time, I don't think that's super significant, but like
Okay.
I'm never going to be excited. I'm never going to be excited about just
Okay.
like a
Great.
treasure that makes me money, but like that's not the point.
Okay. Great. Great. So you're really where you're valuing this is for where you're drawing.
I think it's quite good when you're drawing, yeah.
Okay. And I guess my thought is a card that all it does is makes me money is not very exciting if I'm drawing. Like almost regardless of how much money it makes, which is probably totally irrational and wrong of me. Because like
Right. I'm yeah.
eventually, if it makes 100 money, then that's stupid. Now all I need is buys and I win the game, right? Um, this is not going to make 100 money. This is always going to make like strictly less than bank.
Yeah, so I think the big difference here is how excited we are about cards that only make you money,
Yes,
especially for treasure
I
cards,
agree. I agree.
non-terminal,
I
not
agree.
spending an action and making a bunch of money. And like sure, without a buy, it's not that impressive and I'm playing money density and like boo-hoo, but like
Right.
how much of that is
Okay.
Pendant's fault and how much of
Perfect.
that is the fault of something that if every other card that's payload and doesn't give you a buy, like
Right. No, okay, I agree. I think this probably then comes down to I tend to want my payload to also have some deck control component to it.
I mean, sure,
Um,
I would prefer that, but sometimes a lot of times you don't get that luxury,
and so I just don't value
and
this
even
effect
if you
that
have
much.
that option, you still probably want some like high value treasure in that deck. Like, yes, let me put 1 platinum in my market deck or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, we're getting to the same issue of I don't know what's the situation look like, right? What
Right.
are your alternatives? So I
I
mean,
think it really comes down to how
that's
excited
always
we
the
get
issue.
about it.
I agree. I agree. I agree. I and when I look at this card, I'm like, bank does not excite me. This effect is worse than bank. Eh.
I
Um,
think, yeah.
and the effect
Fair.
is worse than bank. It is cheaper than bank. I, I don't know how relevant. Like, it's not nothing. I don't know how relevant exactly that is. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then King's Cash. Yeah, like I want to play it on supplies, and I'm warmer on King's Cash than I am on Pendant.
Because this can give you buys and can give you deck control.
Well, I guess theoretically, but I think it's going to make more money more often.
I think the comparison is platinum, right? I think King's Cash is a lot like Platinum.
Yeah, and I think I usually prefer Platinum over King's Cash.
Right, but Platinum costs 9.
Right. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think this is right. If you play a copper with this, it was like it was a silver, and you're super sad. So don't buy it in a deck where that's going to be the case usually.
Sure.
If you hit a silver with this, it's making 4 money, and that's pretty good for 7.
Neato.
It's not amazing, but it's pretty good. If you hit a gold with this, you were buying a province if this was a gold anyway, probably, but that's still fine.
Unless you weren't. And then if you hit a fool's gold with it,
yeah,
that's pretty
sure.
sexy.
It's not as hot as if you hit a supplies with it. That's the real
Or a
hotness.
platinum, or a loot.
Or a crown, because you
What?
you play storyteller.
No?
You play
Okay.
storyteller. You
Right.
play King's Cash.
That's an important detail.
No, you just have to be in your action phase. Any way to do it in your action, you play black market. You play King's Cash. You play crown.
Yep.
Yeah. Edge cased with one. You play. There's weird. This set might make capitalism better. This set might make capitalism better because there's a bunch of stuff where like the treasure type suddenly matters more.
I mean, King's Cash makes capitalism better, I guess.
Yes. So now you can do King's Cash, bridge. Hooah!
Yep. We did it. We broke Dominion.
It's time to bury that thought with Barry. My initial thought when reading this is rip Counting House.
We hardly knew you. If you can
We hardly knew you. It was only like 8 years or something, right?
For the low cost of $5, you can ensure that you have a Counting House on the bottom hand of your deck.
I'm playing a Counting House deck. Having some extra money is not my problem.
Wait a second. Is this like the new T-Fair Counting House?
Getting 6 more coppers in my deck is my problem. This can be the new key. This with a Chancellor effect. So like this plus Scavenger plus enough high value treasure in your deck is the new. It's the new Scavenger stash. All I look at with this is I'm like my sweet Chancellor effects.
That seems a lot worse than Scavenger Stash. And Scavenger Stash is like,
how much money do you need, right? You need to buy this
12?
4 times, so you need 12. So you need your other 4 cards to make 10.
Yeah, and you need 2 copies of it.
Hard.
You need 2 copies of all that.
I'm not worried. Well, no, you only need. Oh, you need 2 copies of everything. Oh.
Yeah. So this is way worse than Scavenger Stash.
I mean, that's where my dreams are. But the reality is this is going to be like, you know how people like that one project that lets you top deck a thing every shuffle?
Star Chart?
Yeah, like you can do this. You draw your deck, you buy a village and a smithy, and then you buy this twice, and then you ensure that you've top deck a village and a smithy, and it only costs you 2 money. And that's pretty decent for reliability.
That whole process cost you $9 and 3 buys.
Well,
so you didn't have to spend the 3rd buy, but you had to have it.
I'm assuming that you wanted to buy the village and the smithy anyway. If you didn't want to buy the village and the smithy anyway, this is worse for sure.
Okay.
Or you just buy a lab and you buy this, and then it,
If I really wanted, if that's what I really wanted to put in my deck, then like, am I really at the bottom of a shuffle?
No, I'm at the bottom of a shuffle because I just drew my whole deck, and now I'm going to add some payload stop cards, and so I need to add a little more draw to be able to draw them. And while I'm doing that, I can also do a little. This then also gives me a little reliability.
That sounds like it costs a lot, but I mean, that doesn't mean it's.
I'm drawing my deck anyway. I wanted to add another wine merchant and another village and another lab. Okay? So I buy the lab, then I buy this to put the lab on top, then I buy the village and the wine merchant. I was buying everything anyway except for this. It cost me 1 extra money to top deck the lab.
Cool. I'm in.
I'm in.
That sounds so good.
I know you're being sarcastic, but it really does to me. But not as
no, not entirely sarcastic. Sounds good.
Not as good as avoid. I guess the other thing you can do with Barry, right, is like if you're playing money, you just make sure that your really good cards don't miss a shuffle. If you're playing rebuilds, you can top deck some rebuilds because you're shuffling a lot with that deck.
Nice.
And you're also junking things into the discard. It's like the Chancellor effect that we always wanted.
Sure.
Avoid. This seems so good. Like this is so good. Like, should I have given this? I think I should have given this a 10 out of 10. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10, Adam.
So
I know
I
it's not
gave
what
it
I
a
put
7.
in the spreadsheet, but I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.
And you had 9s in the spreadsheet, and I had a 7, and you want 10 out of 10.
It's a 10 out of 10. This card is not a card. This event is a 10 out of 10, Adam. So what you do is you open with this. Not on turn 1, obviously. Maybe occasionally on turn 1 when you can trigger the shuffle. But like on turn 2, you buy this.
Okay.
And then, well, you have a 6-card shuffle on turn 3.
Okay.
No, it's not 6. It's you just bottom deck 3.
8.
So it's 8. Yeah, you have an 8-card shuffle on turn 3.
Okay.
So you're going to hit 5 because you're not drawing any estates because those are the 3 cards you're going to bottom deck, or you're going to discard rather.
Okay.
So you're going to hit 5 if you want it. You're going to hit 6 most of the time if you want
6,
it.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time.
I mean, if you have a 3/4, you can just avoid twice on turn 2 and guarantee it, right? Yeah.
I was going to come up to that next.
Yeah.
If you hit 4 on turn, then you can avoid twice. You have a 5-card shuffle, and
your $3 buy is in there, yeah.
And you have your $3 buy with 4 coppers or estates,
whatever you want. Yeah, if you want chapel.
It's like you open, if you open it at a chapel, then you get a trash 3 estates and a copper, and you're like, it's so good because you have a short shuffle and you get exactly the shuffle you want. Is very, very good if you have 3/4. It's still, I think, reasonable. Or alternatively, like if you wanted to open with a 3 and a 2 and this, like this doesn't have to be the only 2 that you get twice. You could get this and lackeys or something. Whatever.
I did mention 2 costs with this on the last episode.
You did.
By the way,
you did.
Thank you. Just taking a little credit here.
And then, like in the late game, if you have one of these things where you just have like oodles of extra money and you're trying to draw your deck, like this could be all of your trashing. You have to buy it a bunch. It costs you a bunch of money. But if there's a way to make enough money, this can effectively be all of your trashing.
If you're going to shuffle on a turn and you have $4 extra.
Yeah. So like I'm drawing my deck and I have the King's Cash or a Pendant or whatever. So I have a bunch of money.
But I thought that didn't get you excited.
Well, it would with this event gets me excited. Okay. I'll jump through hoops for it. So now I've drawn my deck because I didn't have to draw as much because I got to not draw all the crappy cards because I avoided them last turn. Now I'm going to keep avoiding them over and over and over again. It's the circle of avoidance. It's the circle of avoidance.
Okay, so I mean, $4 is a lot to pay every single turn.
Yeah.
You also had to like be shuffling and have $4 you wanted to spend the first time, so the timing is potentially awkward.
Or just every turn that I'm gonna shuffle, like I get to the bottom of I'm gonna shuffle. I have 4 or fewer cards. I'm just gonna buy a void as many times as possible.
I mean, this sounds like a thing that you're gonna do, and it's gonna be good. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm having trouble getting all the way up to 10 out of 10. I gave this a 7.
Yeah.
And you're making me think about an 8. So like, bravo.
Hot.
But I'm not close to 10 here though.
10 out of 10.
Get me to 10. Get me there, man.
I can't do it right now.
Okay. Okay.
I want to move on.
Okay, let's move on.
Mirror, which I think you like really hated the art on this card.
Yeah, almost all of the comments on the video for last episode were people telling me the intent. Oh,
Yeah.
they're building a house that's supposed to be a mirror image of the. It's not now. It's not in the art. Make it in the art that it is in mirror image. Don't have it being built.
It's trying to show you that it's
the wrong freaking color.
It's the verb mirror, not the. And their only part, but like they should have had like
Put a mirror
mime.
in the art.
They should have had a mime like copying the guy who's across from him.
That
like
some guy said in one of the comments, events are always verbs, and I go to adventures and I look at like
alliance.
Alms.
It's the first thing that I just thought of.
I look at like alms and like
alliance.
It's like half of the events are verbs.
Anyway, what I wanted to say about mirror is you compared it to stonemason. I think that's a fine comparison. I would compare it to transport.
I think that's another great comparison, yeah.
Getting a cheap code. So compared to transport, this can't do the thing where you transport the same thing twice and get it. It can't do the thing where you stack up and buy like 3 transports and then buy the 5 once and get a bunch of them for cheap.
Yeah.
But what it can do that transport can't is trigger gain effects. So like if you want to get 2 border villages, transporting that was not a good way to do it. And more importantly, this is extra gains and transport can't be.
Yeah, because it gives you the buyback.
Because it gives you the
requires
buyback.
that you have the extra 3 money on the same turn that you're buying the thing, yeah.
Transport
can be opened
super honking strong. And I think this is worse, but also quite good.
Interesting.
I mean, sometimes it's going to be better, I think. And it's kind of weird, right? Because earlier I was talking about, well, just having only money is not that good. And like, I'm thinking like, well, if it gave you a buy, that'd be something. But those cards didn't. And then this is like, well, the transport basically just saves you money. And this card gives you an extra gain. And yet I think the transport is better. So I'm apparently a very inconsistent person, but.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I think it's appreciably different enough from transport in that it gives you extra gains.
Yeah, I guess probably the real reason why I think transport is better is because it also does that thing where you can open with an altar
top deck of 5
or something. Yeah.
Or if you're lucky, an altar, yeah.
Which this just can't do. Yeah, usually a 5, but sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Last
and that's a big deal. Yeah.
Last but possibly least, probably not, Scrounge.
Okay.
This is the one.
Ooh, you gave this a 5, and I gave it an 8, yeah.
Well, and this is weird to rate for me, because you're talking about this like you're going to open it every game to trash estates, and sometimes twice.
I think it is rare to not want to open with this card, yeah.
And I don't think I'm not going to do that often, because here is my thought.
Let's hear it.
I think gaining an estate and a 5 in an opening is pretty decent sometimes.
It sounds like you're opening with this to trash an estate.
No. I'm opening.
We don't disagree.
No. If you open with it to trash an estate, I'm opening with it to gain an estate. And a 5.
Oh.
So I'm not opening with it to trash an estate because I don't want to let you gain a 5 in an estate. Now, not all the time. It has to be a good enough 5.
That is a hot take. What 5s are you thinking about? Like
trashers mostly.
No, I'm out. I firmly disagree.
Here's my question to you, Adam. Do you never open desperation to get a 5?
I would rarely. That seems very bad. It's very rare I would do that. Yeah.
I do that sometimes.
Especially not a trasher.
If it's
like, go ahead.
Really? Especially not interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I think it needs to be a good 5, and I think we probably want it to be a deck control 5.
It has to trash, like, a bunch of cards at once, right? It has to be count.
So count was a thought I had. Possibly...
Not T-Post. I don't think T-Post is good enough.
Sentry? What do you feel about Sentry?
No.
Okay.
I am a lot... I think Sentry is like a good 1 or 2 rating points lower than #the community.
Well, right, but like it's appreciably better when you can get it before turn 3, right?
It's true. Same with T-post, and I think in a lot of cases I don't want to be doing that.
Interesting. So
Depends, but yeah.
I think I'm higher on that possibility. I also think I'd think about it with like Wharf.
That gives me the boo-boo GBs. I'm not saying never, but I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, it also somewhat depends, like, what else is available, right? So, like, if I'm also opening, if there is well, and you wouldn't be opening with this if there was another strong trasher that you could open with, probably, right?
I think a lot of times I would, because you open with this and the other trasher, and you have a 10-card shuffle. Your trasher is never missing that shuffle.
So you think that you would open with this and Chapel?
Yes.
I think if you did that, I would be happy to open with Chapel and a 5er and an estate for a large chunk of 5ers.
I mean, there's a chunk of 5ers, sure. I'm not going to use the word large to describe that chunk of 5ers.
Okay. When I say large chunk, it's definitely a minority of 5ers, but I think it's a large enough. When I say a large chunk, I'm thinking maybe a majority of boards there will be at least one of them on the board.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and pull a number out of my butt. Like, I'm thinking maybe 10% of the 5ers in the game would make me want to do that, and I don't know how that equates to.
And I'm thinking more like 55% of kingdoms, and I don't know how that equates to how many 5ers.
Yeah, it's tough to say, but I think there is real disagreement here.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm sure there is, because you're like, oh, that sounds terrible, and I'm like, I open Desperation sometimes. Like, I play the Cursed Gold sometimes.
I do sometimes, for sure, but
it's not a great comparison, because like the Cursed Gold,
having a 10-card shuffle is a very different thing than the difference between a 12 and a 13-card shuffle, by the way. Having the difference between like a 10 to 12 card shuffle, where you're trashing a card instead of gaining a card, right? That's a much bigger difference than
that's
the 12
why I talk
to 13.
That's why I talk about Desperation, because it's the same thing, except for Desperation you have a curse instead of an estate, right?
But then there's also, on the same event here, the idea that you can have a 10-card shuffle.
There's you could also instead you for sure have the option to trash a card.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Which I think is overpowered. Like, if there was an event that just said $3 trash a card from your hand.
Yeah, I mean, that would be. I think that would be stronger than this event is.
That seems absolutely nuts to me.
Okay. Because.
I mean, I know why, but I just disagree.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
And then here's the funny thing. So you had 2 different ratings, because you rated them once and you rated them again. Yeah. One time you gave it a 5. Another time you gave it a 7. I gave it an 8. So after all this discussion, why explain your low rating then? Yeah.
In terms of the number, I don't know whether to rate it low, because here's why I gave it 2 such different numbers. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm scared of trashing an estate with this, because I don't want my opponent to be able to get a 5 on the opening. So that makes me think I'm not going to open with it very often, which greatly reduces its power to me.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe that's the big thing. You just think that happens so often that it significantly detracts from the power level of doing this, right? Is that right?
Yeah, basically, yes. I mean that's what I was saying with what I was saying.
So
I think
crazy
it would be strong if it was just trash a card, because I think, I don't know.
Leave a comment in the comments section. It seems so. Wandering Winder is exceptional at Dominion. He's so good at this game, and he does.
I have not played a game of Dominion in like 2 months.
Okay, everyone is bad at Dominion. You are correct. However, you are better than so many people at this game, and you are good at talking about and expressing your ideas. And we've gotten to this point, and the fact that you do believe this in your heart and in your butt, I have to respect that.
I am very open to being wrong about this. Like, I'm
Okay.
not confident. I'm not confident.
Because
But
I'm
it's just
trying
like,
to be open to you being right, and it's really hard.
my
You know what
gut
I mean?
feeling is like you're gonna, well, and so here's the other thing though that I wanted to say is that I think that you were saying the only thing that you could imagine almost ever getting with this in terms of the gaming thing is a duchy, because it's like, oh, it's 4 points, man, right? I think even
That's
if
slightly hyperbolic, but yes,
I know it
for
was,
the
but
most
I
part,
think
yeah.
there's going to be a decent number of cases where you can get deck control and you can trash all the stuff you want to trash using a trasher that's not just this.
Yeah, and I think like warehouses and stuff make that a lot more viable for sure.
Like no, sorry. What I mean is like you've got an upgrade, or you've got a junk dealer, or you've got something like that.
Oh, you
Right?
just want a gainer of
And
any kind.
now I have a way. Once my deck is under control, now I have, say I have a junk dealer, right? And then I get my deck under control, and my junk dealer is not going to do anything for me because I've gotten rid of all my junk. Now, if I scrounge for a $5,
Yeah, it's like
I can play my junk dealer, which, I mean, like I don't actually get the card back out of it because I had to draw the estate, so like it's not that great.
yeah, it's like you got a copper with it instead of an estate.
So, but like I could play the junk dealer, which gives me an extra money. But more importantly, like then it's just a cheaper $5, right? Because like
So
I'm
it's
gonna be
kind of
able
like
to play that because
a gold.
I'm gonna retrash the estate anyway. And if there's some reason, certain trash for benefit things, maybe like if I want to be able to gain a bunch of 3, I don't know, like if I have an upgrade and then there's like some 3 costs that I want to get, like.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like there's experiment on the board, then great, right? Like,
And also like shoving a bunch of upgrades in your deck is certainly good when there's upgrade around. Like
right.
yeah,
So
I can
like,
get that.
yeah. So I think
Yeah,
there's some more situations than what you were talking about in your hyperbolic statement last time. Even if you don't want to give me the opening cases, which it's a little bit hard to tell. I mean, it's still hard for me to tell with desperation. Like, how often do I want to open desperation to get the thing? Sometimes, for sure, is definitely more than never, and is definitely a lot less than always.
Welcome to Making Luck. A more than never, but less than always podcast.
And you're right. You have to think about, like, I could open this and my other card, and then I've got a 10 card, and it depends on what the other card is, like how important that is, and like if I have a draw 3, then suddenly having a 13 card shuffle is maybe not as bad, but then weird stuff, right?
Maybe not as bad if the other thing you got was.
What if I can open with this to gain me a quartermaster, Adam? And then I can have the quartermaster gain me more estates.
Yeah, but those estates can be effectively wormed.
And then I can
Plateau
somehow
shepherds.
steal my opponent's. What is the shepherd heirloom
pasture?
Called? Yeah, I could steal my opponent's pasture. So I have a whole
with
bunch
masquerade. Yeah.
I have a whole bunch of cheap duchies.
Possession masquerade, get them to pass you the pasture.
And then we're playing a 6-player game, and I get every player's pasture.
Whoa, that's a lot of possessions.
And then, no, it's I force it out of them because I play bandit, and then I trash it, and then I play treasure, and I gain it out of the trash.
I don't think. Wait, because bandit trash pasture?
Bandit trashes any treasure that's not copper.
Okay.
Bandit can trash curse if what's it called is in the game.
If charlatan.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm listening. I'm still in. I'm still in. Keep going. 6 pastures.
That was it. I have 6 pastures.
Scrounge quartermaster, 6 pastures.
So now I just want to scrounge to just gain the estate and another estate, because estate is worth 7 points.
7 points. Yeah.
Hot.
We did it, guys. And everyone else has been scrounging their estates because now they're bad because they lost their pasture. Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Or Adam, how about this? I trashed because my deck sucked, so I got rid of my initial estates. Then I bought inheritance.
Oh, inheritance. Yeah, it helps you hit 7,
Yeah.
right? By thinning your estates, and then it gains you those estates right back. Look at that hashtag synergy. That
But I think
has entered the realm of mediocre.
The real question is, like, how often do you use this to do an impression of desperation in the opening? Okay, I open with it 31% of the time.
When it's available.
Yeah. Of the 89 games I've had desperation available, I've opened with it approximately 31.
Yeah. It seems like
of the time.
I would do it less than 31%. Yeah.
And you're right. You do have to compete with trashing an estate instead of doing that. So it's probably less than that. Cool. Yeah, you probably want to do that to trash an estate a lot, and it's probably really good. But I guess what I was
you probably
want
to leave a comment in the comments section. I want to hear what you have to say about this, listener.
Yeah, but you do want to think about, like, if there is some super crazy fiver.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to buy donate.
Like trickster.
If you're going to buy donate.
Well, okay, if I'm going to buy donate, then I'm not so concerned about trashing an estate on turn 1 or turn 2. So that option ain't going to be there.
Or if you open with Cathedral, and then on turn 2, you could do this to gain the estate that you just trashed on turn 2 back, and a fiver.
You have an 11 card deck.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. Cathedral probably is a pretty decent case for this, because, like,
yeah,
you want
you're already trashing
games
the one
to trash, right? And
yeah, and like doing this along with Cathedral, kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying you do this every turn, but you do it some.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was talking about turn 2 specifically.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it deferred.
Trashing one card instead of one of your opening buys is so amazing. Trashing 2 cards instead of one of your opening buys is fantastic, but not all that much better than just trashing one.
Right? Yeah, here's what I want to say about trashing an estate in the opening.
Yeah.
I often spend 4 in the opening to I guess
banish.
I could look up the rate, but to banish.
Yeah.
And trashing the estate is worse than banishing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that much worse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cheaper.
Yeah.
But the reason it might be more worse is because your opponent might be able to gain a 5. So think about it. Realize that it's probably not worth it for them, but sometimes it will be, so think about it.
And sometimes it's going to bait them into doing it and making a mistake.
Yeah, but I don't think you should make a play based on that very
Right, but it's going to be funny if it does happen.
Yeah. I mean, I always wonder sometimes, this is like a theoretical question, right? But there's got to be some games where a human player, you could outperform a theoretical perfect game, right?
Sure, by getting better draws.
Or no, a theoretically perfect player, not just by getting better draws. I mean, even I guess theoretically in a deterministic game, where you make a play that, because your opponent is going to play imperfectly, turns out better for you.
Like all that, oh god, that business where I got into the weeds on like the golem reveals adventurer and poorhouse, and like you decide to, you have the insanity wolf meme where you play the adventurer first. Yeah, and people were like, yeah, but what if you played a contraband later and you wanted your opponent to name something bad, and so you wanted to show weakness by having less money? And I'm like, that's not a thing.
Yes, there was some case where somebody was trying to argue where it would be better to have fewer VP chips.
Yeah. Because
Like,
then someone could mess up with their war chest. Or whatever.
war chest, what's
Or
war?
contraband.
Well, no, it was just about like, oh, they'll buy something different because they'll think that the game is in this position, but in reality it's in this other position. And so you've tricked them into making a worse play, so therefore it's better to not play the monument.
No. That's a big
And
fat no.
I'm like, well, only if they're stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily. That's
Dominion
too
is
harsh
not
of
a game where
that's too
your
harsh of a thing
opponents
to
miss.
say. But like,
That's not.
If your opponent is playing optimally, they take into account the possibility that you might be trying to make a weird play to throw them off.
I feel like we're playing Survivor.
Leave a comment in the comments section if you would rather do this than be on a deserted island with Jeff Probst.
Oh, I would rather be on a deserted island with Jeff Probst.
I would not. Nothing against you, Probsty.
Totally reasonable.
I just have no interest in being on a deserted island.
I'm just a special kind of crazy. Yeah, do you have anything else to rant about, Mr. Winder?
Smell you later.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to this podcast. No idea when the next one's going to be, but hey, hope you like this one. Bye.
Also, hope you like this one.
I'm sorry. You can mirror someone and have a mirror in the picture.
No, Adam. No. We are going through all of the events right now. Save, that's a verb. Scouting party, noun. Traveling fair, noun. Bonfire, noun. Expedition, noun. Ferry, both.
Both.
Plan, both.
Both.
Mission, noun.
But
Pilgrimage.
In plan, when it's both, I think these boths are interesting. When plan, it's both.
Yeah.
There's a guy looking over a plan, the noun plan.
Well, I mean,
he's planning.
He's probably
but the
also
noun's
planning.
in there. Okay, yeah. The noun is in the art.
Pilgrimage, noun. Ball, at least in the way that it's being used here for sure. Noun.
Noun.
Raid, noun. Seaway, noun. Trade, both. Lost arts, noun or phrase.
Trade verb. I'm willing to just say trade as a verb here.
Training, gerund.
Gerund, so noun.
Inheritance, noun. Pathfinding, gerund. Empires.
Oh, God.
Triumph, noun. Annex, both. I guess triumph is kind of both.
Triumph is both.
Triumph is both. Donate, verb. Delve, verb. Tax, both. Banquet, noun. Ritual, noun. Salt the earth, verbal phrase. We'll give that as a verb. Wedding, noun. Windfall, noun. Conquest, noun. Dominate, verb. Okay, when's the next time that...
Oh. Modern, I think you've made your point.
Menagerie, gamble, verb. Pursue, verb. Ride, verb. Toil, verb. Enhance, verb. March, verb.
Whoa,
transport,
we're making
both.
a comeback here.
Banish, verb. Bargain, both. Invest, verb. Seize the day, verb.
Okay, fine, it's both.
It is a bargain, and you bargain with someone.
Okay, fine.
Commerce, noun. Demand, verb. Stampede, noun. Reap, verb. Enclave, noun. Alliance, noun. Populate, verb.
Welcome to Making Luck, a Parts of Speech podcast. Wow, okay. Guy in the comments section. I hope this is
Get roasted. Also in this set, there's Foray and Maelstrom. I'm not going through them all, but there's Foray and Maelstrom and Invasion, and those are all nouns. So more recently, they've been more verbs, but they're definitely not all.
Editing Adam here. For those of you keeping score at home, I added in the Plunder events, And total, there are 27 verbs, 28 nouns, and 7 boths. So it's basically 55%. All right, thanks for backing me up. I did not ask for this, but
I did not ask for this either, but I did not know that guy made that comment. But man, I feel alive right now. I also did not know that that was going to be the outcome. When I started reading through adventures, I'm like, holy crap, these are mostly nouns.
I mean, I did say it was about half. Okay, and I think it's. I'm gonna say 55%. I don't know which way, but like.
Won't it be great when I actually invent that? Something that makes time, like constructs it out of.
I mean, that would be pretty
nothing.
Sweet. But hey, like, I mean, we've already made luck, so we can't be that far away from making time, right?